Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Sharon Noble, Director of the BC Coalition to Stop Smart Meters. Welcome to the show, Sharon.
Thank you very much, Jim.
You're telling me off air you're being inundated with 300 emails a day from people who feel they've been abused by Fortis and BC Hydro over the issue of the installation of controversial smart meters.
It is horrible, Jim, what is happening to people by both these utility companies. And it's depressing. I mean, I'm getting letters left, right, and center from people asking for help, desperate for help. They have letters from their doctors telling them they shouldn't have these things, and they're fighting for their health and for the health of their families. And for the safety, they're concerned about the fire issue as well. And nothing is happening. No one is helping them. In fact, these monopolies are becoming worse bullies every day. Horrible things are happening to people.
Well, we just had a report from the Privacy Commissioner complaining that the BC government has deleted all their emails, so there's no paper trail. Do you suspect that Hydro might be doing the same thing?
I don't know. I have no reason to think that they aren't. They're taking smart meters from the scene of fire so they can't be investigated. Why wouldn't they destroy emails? They don't want evidence. They don't want us to know what's happening. I think I've told you before that I've got a complaint before the Privacy Commissioner because BC Hydro refuses to release information. I'm getting fire reports. I have dozens of fire reports saying the fire was caused by a failed electrical distribution system. The only electrical distribution device on our home is the smart meter. And if it's failed, if it's responsible for the fire, shouldn't we be told? The fire inspectors have not been able to see the meters. There was a fire in Saanich just outside Victoria on Wednesday morning. If you look at my update last night, you'll see a video of this fire in Saanich. Go to a minute 0.34, 34 seconds into the video, and you'll see an empty meter base sitting there. The meter had already been taken. The inspector got there yesterday afternoon, and one of our members was there taking pictures. He spoke with the fire inspector, and the fire inspector said that he's sick and tired of having the meter taken before he even arrives at the scene. It's illegal, and he can't determine whether the meter is guilty of causing the fire or not. When I've asked the fire commissioner, he says this is not allowed under the Fire Safety Standards Act, which is correct. But when I tell him it's happening, he says there's nothing they can do because it's Hydro equipment. Hydro is taking their own equipment. When I've asked Hydro what they're doing with these these meters that have been involved in fires, they say that they're not investigating them. They're just sending it back to Itron and asking for a replacement under their warranty program. This is horrible.
Most people would say this sounds like a conspiracy, but, the lack of something is terribly hard to prove, isn't it?
Well, we've got so much evidence, and now that Hydro and Fortis are both acting like thugs, I think more people are going to be starting to get angry. As I told you off air, Jim, I got a letter yesterday from someone. I haven't permission to release his name or location, but I'm going to tell you the high-level details. He's an older gentleman with many health problems. He owns an apartment building. He has been paying legacy fees. That's $70 a month, or billing period, on every apartment in the building. He said he's doing this because there are many seniors living there, and many of them have health problems. So he's doing this to protect his tenants. A month ago, Hydro called him, or came to his door, I don't remember which, and said they were going to be installing smart meters. And he said, no, you're not. You can replace the legacy meters if they've expired with other legacy meters, with other analogs, but you cannot install a smart meter. I'm paying the legacy fee. And that is correct under the tariff, which is the law that was written by BC Hydro. They left. 5 minutes later, the electricity went out in the building. He looked out the window and saw that Hydro had cut the lines. They had a cherry picker up, and they were cutting the lines. He ran out, and he's an elderly gentleman with lots of health problems. He's confronting them, and while he's confronting them, he starts feeling angina, and he lies down. He's scared he's having a heart attack. Hydro accused him of faking it. The gentleman's wife is trying to call an ambulance. Hydro started pulling their truck out and almost ran over him. He said his pants were run over. The wife is calling an ambulance. Meanwhile, the RCMP arrive, and instead of helping the gentleman, they sided with Hydro. They told the guy to get up, the fellow to get up off the ground, and he said, he can't. he's having a heart attack. They said, you're faking it. Hydro says you're faking it. They made him stand up, and they put his hands behind his back. And while this was happening, he had a seizure. Finally, the ambulance came, and the RCMP and Hydro told the ambulance people that he was faking it. The ambulance took him to the hospital, where he was treated. Meanwhile, while he was gone, Hydro put his smart meters in. This is happening across the province. I had another, someone write me from Fortis, in the interior, where Fortis is the monopoly providing electricity. An 80-year-old woman just returned from hospital, suffering from pneumonia. Her doctor told her not to have a smart meter. Fortis cut her electricity off. She's now sitting in this cold weather, recovering from pneumonia, and she has no heat. This is what is happening in British Columbia, one of the richest places in the world. The government is allowing these goons to threaten, harass, mistreat, and perhaps kill people. People could die because of what they're doing.
Well, where do Hydro workers and RCMP officers come out with diagnosing a heart attack?
Where do they come off breaking the law? They're breaking the law all over the place. The RCMP officers had no right to side with Hydro. This is a civil argument, not a criminal argument. And this gentleman had been paying the legacy fees, the tariff, which is the law. It's the contract that Hydro wrote that we must agree to if we're going to have electricity. They wrote it. They control it. In it, it says if you pay the legacy fees, you will keep your legacy meters until they run out. People are still getting analogs all over this province. I'm getting statements from people almost daily saying that they had a good experience, that their analog was replaced with another analog. If this is how they're treating people. They didn't know. This is an apartment building filled with senior citizens. There could have been, and there might have been, I don't know. There could have been people there with medical devices. If they cut that electricity off, those people could have died. They could have caused all sorts of problems, and they just don't care. These are arrogant goons, and they've got to be stopped. People have to know their rights. BCUC has not looked at the safety issue with regard to fires for the Hydro people. They only looked at the evidence that was bought and paid for under the application. They can't look at for Fortis. They only looked at that. They didn't look at the fire issue. We've got to go to BCUC and say, under the BC Utilities Commission Act, it is the law that you protect us from dangerous practices and from dangerous devices, and they're not doing it. They can't evade it. They're using the Clean Energy Act to tell Hydro customers there's nothing they can do. That's not true. They're telling Fortis customers that they've looked at all the problems and they agreed that everything is fine. That's not true. They never looked at the fire issue. And they really didn't look at the health issue either. They were told a bunch of bunk and they bought it because they were told to. But the fact of the matter is, people should be joining together. Petitions should be signed. We should be marching before the BC Utilities Commission and demanding that they do their job. They're supposed to be there to protect us, and they aren't, and neither are any of the politicians.
I was going to say, the minister in charge, Bill Bennett, has he responded to your registered letter you gave him back in May?
In the middle of June.
Or middle of June.
Nothing. And I've sent him 2 reminders. Nothing. He doesn't care. I haven't received anything from John Horgan or Adrian Dix either. It's very concerning that I'm sending them evidence of fires and nothing has happened. There are more and more fires happening, and it's getting harder and harder to get evidence because they're not sharing it. It's like with the privacy commissioner. They don't want to give us the information, and they're not. The privacy commissioner is going to have to go in there and force them. And by that time, probably the evidence is being hidden. We probably will never get it.
You claim BC Hydro says it has received no feedback to warrant a review of the legacy fees for keeping your analog meter.
That's right. They've submitted a new application for a rate design with the BC Utilities Commission. And in that application, which, by the way, was over 4,000 pages long, and we were given less than a week notice to read it and to respond. This is highly irresponsible, and I think it's deliberate so that the public will not try to even read it and respond. We have responded, but on page 412, I believe it was, don't quote me, but I think that's it, 412, it said that they had held a meeting with their stakeholders, and it was determined that nobody had any concerns about the legacy fees. I don't know who these stakeholders were, and I don't know when this meeting was held. They didn't provide this information. But I can tell BCUC, and I have, that I've had hundreds and hundreds, and so has BCUC and so has BC Hydro. I get copies of the letters that these people write. And you know, Jim, it takes a lot for many people to write letters. It's not easy for them. They don't like complaining. They don't like having to put their thoughts on paper. Many people just don't like writing. But they're doing it, and these people, many of whom don't speak English as a first language, they're writing letters. They're getting their friends and families to help them in many instances. There are older people who don't have computers, so they're having to write it by hand. This is a major consideration that these people care enough to write to their politicians, to write to BC Hydro, and to write to the BC Utilities Commission, and they're being ignored.
Updating some other issues, you say the deadline for intervener registration in the hydro application has been extended. Can you explain that?
Well, it was extended 5 days. The original deadline was October 15th, and we found out about it a week earlier. They extended it by 5 days to October 19th. And they extended some of the additional response times. But anyone who would like to read the application, they can go on to their website, www.bcuc.com, and go under, I think it's called, it's at the very top, it's current activity or current applications. And it's called BC Hydro Rate Design. And they can read the application, they can read the responses. So far, there have been quite a few people who were able to get intervener status. If other people want to, write and complain that you were not given enough time to read it. I haven't had a chance to read it all. 4,000 pages, that's a lot of reading, and lots of it's very technical. 4,000
pages on an issue Hydro claims people don't care about.
Well, it's a rate design that they want to get in there, and they also say that, they speak about time of use billing. They're talking about the rate design in many features. They don't really address the legacy fees, and they don't address the time of use billing because they don't think people are interested. So they're talking about other design features that they're trying to change, and I believe that it will affect us. I just don't know how because I haven't been able to go through all the application yet. They have an obligation under law to allow people to have time to read these things and to respond. And 4 or 5 days is not enough time. And I believe that the BC Utilities Commission probably is being driven by Bill Bennett and by BC Hydro to do this. I have no evidence to that, but I suspect that's true because the BC Utilities Commission has an obligation to allow public input. Under law, this is required, and it's just not. We're not being given enough time.
Well, it's the same as not being allowed to do it at all.
Yep, it is. We're being guided by a government that believes that it's a petty dictatorship. Christy Clark is now giddy because Justin Trudeau, a liberal, is going to be premier or prime minister. She's not a liberal. She's a fascist. She's a conservative. She is far from being the type of liberal that the federal liberals are and that Justin Trudeau wants to be. She has been more conservative than even Stephen Harper, I believe, and she has done things that are going to cause problems here in this province for a long, long time. Look at Site C. There is someone, you should go to the BC Utilities Commission website and read something by an intervener statement by a person, and I wish I could remember his name. It's Richard Benyar or something. You will see his name. It's Brey something. He has written and if you go into my update of 2 or 3 nights ago, I included it, a very articulate statement about Site C. Site C is something that we don't need and we can't afford, yet for her corporate buddy, she's pushing it through. She's going to be ruining prime farmland, land that the First Nations people have a right to keep that they revere, and she is doing this without any regard. They're already cutting down trees that the First Nations people say have been the homes of bald eagles for decades. They just went in there and cut them down. It's a very, very sad thing what she's doing to this province.
Well, Sharon, some of the things you've told me, it's a $9 billion project, but by the time it's done, we're making ourselves so more electrically efficient in British Columbia and across the planet. LEDs are old technology. I understand there's something that's 100 times more efficient than they are on the way to light our homes. And solar power is making leaps and bounds every day. And plus battery technology, that by the time this thing comes online, we won't need the thing.
We don't already, Jim. BC Hydro has made projections about electricity requirements for the last at least 15 years that have been wrong. They keep predicting that usage and demand is going to increase, but it hasn't. Even as the population has increased, the utilization has decreased. people are becoming more energy conscious. They are using solar panels, as you said. They're using, better light bulbs, newer appliances. The demand is already consistently reducing. And when you see things, there's an economist, his name is Eric Anderson, and he has written many, many very, very good and in-depth articles projecting the usage and showing that the plans that BC Hydro has been projecting are completely off. And yet, BC Hydro continued to project these to the year of 2029 when Site C is due, and they're projecting continued growth on this same trajectory. It's not going to happen. BC Hydro is going into a death spiral. As they increase their prices, as they increase their inefficiency, as they increase their harassment of their customers, people are leaving. People are going off the grid every day. Solar panels are getting cheaper. These new wind trees from France are going to be coming here. They're more efficient. There are new batteries that are being made by Tesla that are going to be affordable. People are not going to stick around and pay these outrageous fees that Hydro's coming up with. So the more people who can afford it will be going off the grid. Hydro will have to increase its rates because it has fewer customers, which will drive more people off the grid. The rates will have to increase even more. It will die. It's a death spiral.
We'll have more with Sharon Noble right after the break.
More and more people are looking to the internet for intelligent, riveting, and thought-provoking interviews. To advertise on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com, call 604-699-8600, 604-699-8600.
In Goddard we trust.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Sharon Noble, director of the BC Coalition to Stop Smart Meters. You say the former commissioner of the California Utilities Commission has come forward with some interesting information about what you call the truth about smart meters.
Yeah, there was an article that was published by there was a meeting. Let me go back now because I wasn't prepared to talk about this. So let me go back and rethink it. There was a meeting in Silicon Valley about a week ago, and they had several scientists who spoke about the dangers of the smart meters and RF and everything, and a former commissioner of the California Public Utilities Commission spoke, and she spoke about how poorly things were done. No investigation, no due diligence. The expenses are going to be horrendously more than if they'd kept their old analog meters. She spoke about the fact that people were being misled by all the wonderful things that they can do. They can't do many of the things that the companies are professing that they will do. The outages, the reduction in theft, these things are not happening. And more technology, new technology is going to be needed before they will be able to do all of these things. And she just tore the current commission apart about the fact that they're hiding the evidence and the truth from the public. And the same thing is happening here in British Columbia. What is interesting is I think we should be looking at this in a new light. We should be charging these companies with fraud. They are selling us a bill of goods. Whether Hydro knew it and agreed to go along with it for political reasons, or whether Hydro didn't do its due diligence, it doesn't matter. Hydro didn't do its job. They bought us something that we don't need and cannot do most of the things that they say. Look at our outages. They're still telling people to notify them. They're watching. They've hired people to keep an eye on Facebook to see when outages are occurring. There are still many, many people who have smart meters that are being read manually. I got an email yesterday from a fellow who lives in Delta, and he said that all of the houses in his neighborhood are still being read manually. This is happening all over the place. Also, the meters that were bought cannot do many of the things. For instance, they didn't take into consideration the fact that the signals are not strong enough to go through concrete walls. And as you know, in many apartment buildings and condos, they have electrical rooms where all the meters are. The meters cannot send signals up to the collector that's out on the street. They'll have to put another antenna, a strong antenna, on that building or inside that building to reach those signals. Also, the signals cannot reach all cell towers because of geographical problems. There are hills and mountains and valleys all over British Columbia. These places are being made to have smart meters, these fire hazards put on their home, and they will never work. The meter's going to have to be read manually. So, this California former head of the commission laid it out pretty clearly that everybody's being roped in to a scheme that's wasteful and not needed.
The head of the U.S. National Security Commission, Admiral Michael Rogers, told a security hearing sponsored by the Wall Street Journal that one of his biggest fears about cyber attack is the vulnerability of the electrical grid because there are no security provisions put into all the computer controls, including your smart meter.
Yep. In fact, General Petraeus, many others have been warning that the electrical grid is very, very vulnerable. And many of them are saying it's not a matter of if, but when a major cyber attack will occur. And when that happens, we will lose all electrical functions. We will be down for not days or weeks, but for months, if not longer. And that's a pretty scary scenario. And what is happening further is that hacking. There have been instances where hackers who are getting in to get private information or just kids messing around, but it could be for more nefarious reasons down the road, are getting in through the smart meter. Once it hasn't happened here yet in British Columbia, but it's happened in California and Ontario and other places where the Zigbee chip is talking to appliances. This Zigbee chip will connect with your computer. It will connect with your internet. That's how things are being connected. And once it can track into your house through the internet, your home, your security system becomes very vulnerable. People should be concerned about this. And Hydro does not have a security system. As this admiral said, and General Petraeus and many others have said, the security is not possible yet. We just can't do it. As one security system is built, the hackers figure a way how to get in. They'll work their way around it. And there may already be viruses in the system that is already, they're waiting. It's just a matter of time. If we did what Timothy Schleckel had said, person who was, in fact, we presented to the BCUC as one of our experts. He was saying what should be done is there should be microgrids. Each community should have its own system, should be independent. Right now, we're going to be tied nationally and internationally to the U.S. so that if something happens to one part of the country, the other part of the country is geared to come to its rescue. If there's a storm, we'll go down and help them out. Well, it also works in reverse. If there's a problem there, a virus or something, if they get it, we'll get it too.
And what people probably don't realize, without electricity, you have no access to gasoline because the pumps are electrically powered. You have no access to your money. The ATMs will all be down, and the bank won't know what you have in your account because their computers will be down. The government wants us to go to a cashless system, but it doesn't take into account if there's an earthquake or a giant windstorm like we had recently. You don't have access to a lot of the things you'll need. And of course, without power, all your food spoils.
Look at the water.
No water either.
You can't get water. The water has to go through systems to clean it, and that's run by electricity. You won't be able to get food because people can't truck it in. The farmers won't be able to get it because their machinery that runs on electricity or gasoline won't work. Our entire civilization, as it is right now, depends upon electricity. And this is why it's so important. Those people who are going off the grid, who will be using solar panels, they'll be able to make it, but they'll probably be having their houses filled with people. We should be investing in microgrids. Our local communities, our local municipalities should be looking at going small. That would be the answer. That would protect us, and we could enjoy a quality of life the same as we're enjoying now, and it would be more secure.
Sharon, is there a website people can go to find out more?
There sure is. It's www.stopsmartmetersbc.com and www.citizens, my voice is cracking, citizensforsafetechnology.org.
Sharon, thanks a lot for chatting with us.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it.
My guest has been Sharon Noble, Director of the BC Coalition to Stop Smart Meters. You're listening to the Goddard Report on TalkDigitalNetwork.com. You can find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Check out our popular YouTube channel, Talk Digital Network. Comments about the show can be emailed to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.